Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I'm currently at the British High Commission here in Kuala Lumpur, joining the Right Honourable Secretary of State for Scotland, the MP Ian Murray. Minister, thank you very much for being the first UK minister under the new administration to come and visit us. Let's walk through with some of the areas of concern and some of the areas of interest that you have while you're here in Kuala Lumpur.
Well, it's great to be here. This is my first international visit as the Secretary of State, and the new government has been very keen to reset international relationships, and coming out here to Malaysia has been a great opportunity because of the long history, but also the great opportunities in the future for both of our countries working together. And
of course, you have met some of the members of our administration, including the Minister of Economy, Rafizi. What would be the areas of discussion that you could share with us when you met him?
Yes, well, I mean, it just shows the breadth of opportunities. So we talked a little bit about CPTPP and the UK joining that formally next month. We spoke about health, and we spoke about some of the partnerships that we have there, both long-term and the opportunities for the future. Energy is a huge issue that both countries are working on. Education, of course. We have 12,000 Malaysian students in the UK, many of which 12% or so are in Scotland, at our ancient universities in Scotland. And we discussed some of those opportunities about investment both in the UK and here in Malaysia. So it was a wide-ranging discussion about our economy. What I wanted to find out, of course, is the biggest mission of the new UK Labour government is to create economic growth in the United Kingdom, and some of the growth figures out here in Malaysia, 5.3% last year, was significant. So I wanted to find out how he did that and how we can perhaps replicate some of that growth in the UK's perspective.
Of course, I don't think it's attributable to one person or one ministry. It's generally an effort, and of course the moment of the year or the moment of the period, that's why we can enjoy that kind of growth. But this is of course on the back of a strong long-term relationship that Malaysia has with the UK. Let's dissect one by one, starting with education. 12,000 students in the UK, 12% in Scotland, ancient universities like St Andrews and Aberdeen and Dundee and more. This is not going to stop, I suppose. The trend is ever increasing. I have a university-going child as well, and she is having a trajectory towards the UK. This is a very common story that we've heard from across the nation. Do you feel that there could be other areas of improvements or growth that we can examine to get more numbers in the UK?
Well, it's hugely important because the educational exchanges and having that educational exchanges is historic, but it's also what gives the opportunities of the future. I don't think there's anybody I've met here yet in Malaysia over the last day or so that haven't actually had a connection directly with education in the United Kingdom or indirectly, and I hope that your daughter does decide to go. I could highly recommend Edinburgh as the other ancient university in the Scottish context. But that's really important, not just for the economies now, but for the economies and relationships and partnerships in the future. There is no doubt that that's had huge implications. We had the 40th anniversary celebrating of the Chevening alumni yesterday in Malaysia, and that's a huge programme of 2,000 alumni now who've had those cultural exchanges. We've signed an agreement this morning between the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh and the UM and UKM universities here in Malaysia for surgical relationships and exchanges, and in fact one of the first surgical fellowships from there will go to St Mary's next year. So it's really, really important because it's not just about education, it's not just about sharing ideas, but it's also about the future. And many of the leaders across the world, but certainly within your own government, have been in education in the United Kingdom and have that partnership. So if we want to grow our economies, if we want to grow our friendship, grow our partnerships, build on our history, but look to the future, then education is one of the key things that unlocks that, and we're very keen to try and pursue those opportunities.
I would like to also argue that despite some political premium that can be associated to both the UK and Malaysia for that matter, education seems to be insulated from this moment because generally speaking, people just want the education experience and of course the experience of university life, the political premium might not necessarily also be attributed to this kind of environment. Do you feel that that is still the case right now? And on top of that, do you feel that the political premium in the UK is actually dissipating, considering that the Prime Minister Keir Starmer is, of course, stabilising things domestically there? Yes,
absolutely, and we want to be very welcoming to students to come. You know, the history is very clear for everyone to see, but actually it's about the opportunities of the future we need to exploit. In the Scottish context, which obviously I'm very passionate about, we have some of the oldest and best universities in the world that can give a great educational experience to Malaysian students, and we should continue to welcome students into Scotland and the rest of the UK higher education sector. But this is one of the key trading things, because education is a massive trading commodity, and sharing students and sharing that knowledge base across both countries is hugely important. And the Prime Minister is very clear that the future of our economy depends on having the very best talents at the very best universities, and we can offer that.
One last question before we go into the break. There's a lot of universities in Malaysia that offer plenty of twinning programs and foundation programs. Do you feel that it is oversaturated in Malaysia when it comes to some of the collaboration that we see from local universities and local colleges with their direct counterparties here, there in the UK?
Well, we have campuses here too. I'm visiting the Heriot Watt campus, which is headquartered, of course, and based in Edinburgh. On my visit here to Malaysia, so it's really important that there's also campuses based here.
It's a beautiful campus.
It's a great campus, and some of the work they're doing jointly with the Malaysian universities and the students here is fantastic. So there's not just about the student exchange, but actually there are campuses, UK campuses here, based in Malaysia, doing work on the ground here as well. So I don't think you can have any type of saturation when it comes to education. It's what unlocks our economy, it's what unlocks our opportunities, it's what means that we can deal with poverty and some of the big issues we have in the United Kingdom in terms of our structure of the economy. So education and investment in education is key to that economically, but it's also key to those relationships between two countries. And I think it's something we should nurture, we should cherish, and we should use the history that we have together in education to build some of those opportunities for the future.
Fantastic. We'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with the Secretary of State of Scotland. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me the Right Honourable Ian Murray, the Scottish Secretary of State. Minister Murray, let's talk a little bit more about the CPTPP and the developments that we've seen over the past few years. The last time I was here in this office, I think it was last year, the UK has just signed an agreement confirming the level of engagement that the UK will be joining the CPTPP. What has been some of the developments that you can share with us today?
Well, the UK will join formally and ratify on the 15th of December and become a full member of the CPTPP, and we're hugely excited about the opportunities that this provides. In the Scottish context, we have goods and services that will benefit hugely from CPTPP, whether it be in food and drink, and of course being a Scot whisky is one of my great passions, and of course that's part of the CPTPP that will benefit hugely from it, but our goods and services are also part of that. And I think it just shows a direction of travel that countries have to work very closely together. Trading blocs have to work very closely together, and CPTPP provides us with that access to those markets in this part of the world, which is hugely important for our traders, but also Malaysian traders as well.
There will be some of the points of contentions that we have to iron out, I suppose, palm oil being one of them. Other trading regional blocs such as APEC, for instance, and of course ASEAN. Do you feel that CPTPP is still seen as a major focus for countries like the UK and Malaysia to think about, because there's so many other regional blocs and trade blocs that could provide some form of incentives for some of the countries to, I guess, deep dive into, and less on, say, for instance, CPTPP?
Well, I mean, trading across the world is hugely important to the United Kingdom. It's something that we're keen to exploit, and all the arguments about leaving the European Union are there for all to see, but actually one of the big opportunities that comes from that is being an outward-looking trading nation, as an independent trading nation, and looking towards other blocks and other trading blocks to be able to increase our own economic output as well as those relationships across the globe. So it's really important that trade will always be complicated because everyone has their own competing trading policy, but also they have their own goods and services that they want to champion. But I think the really important thing that comes from CPTPP is the UK being an outward-looking nation, resetting those relationships with the international community, showing that we can put together mutually beneficial trading deals that are helpful to our economy and our people, but also to those other countries that are involved in the trading blocks as well. So it's really, really important that we see that ratified on the 15th of December. And everyone in this office is very, very excited about it. And everyone that we've spoken to on this trip to Malaysia is very excited about the UK's accession to CPTPP in December. So we're looking forward to it.
Speaking about the European Union, do you feel that under Keir Starmer a lot more can be done when it comes to establishing trade relations, political relations with the European Union, considering that this is a fresh slate, I suppose? Labour was voted in quite overwhelmingly. Do you feel that this is the moment of change for restarting and re-establishing relations with the European Union?
Yes, I mean, it's a moment of change for re-establishing relationship with the European Union and the rest of the world. There is no doubt the previous government damaged our relations with the international community. And this is a real moment of reset with the European Union. It is our biggest trading partner, individually and collectively. Many of the issues that we have in terms of our economy, trading goods and services, the movement of people, protection of borders, security, particularly with the Russia-Ukraine issues at the moment as well, are all dependent on the UK working very, very closely with our European Union partners, but also our European nation partners as well. So that resetting of the relationship is clear for people to see and something that we have to work very hard on to make sure that we can get the benefits both for the UK and for the rest of the European Union.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him, but in the days after Trump won the election in America, and witnessing the BBC World Service airing the PMQ, it was a pretty tough moment for your Prime Minister to deal with the questions. Is it going to be difficult re-establishing ties with your American counterparts now that President Trump is going to be back at the White House January onwards?
Well, I mean, the UK has a long-lasting special relationship with America. That special relationship does not change, whoever is the incumbent of the White House. It's perfectly up for the people of America to elect their own elected members and their president, as it is for any other country in the world. But it's also incumbent on us as a government to work with whoever is the office holder, the great office holder of President of the United States. And so that special relationship will endure. Of course, President Trump's mother was from the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, so he has a very strong Scottish connection. He owns golf courses in Scotland as well. So
the former I know, I didn't know, the latter I know. Yeah, it's a bit interesting that there's some Scottish heritage there. Yeah.
But I think it's really important for all governments to work with whoever is in the White House, because America is no doubt the economic driver of the world. The old adage that if America sneezes, the rest of the world economy catches a cold is perfectly true today as it has been over history. So really important to develop those relationships. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary has met previously with President Trump before the election, had a very constructive discussion
when he was still campaigning.
Still campaigning, and that those constructive discussions will continue to happen throughout the transition and indeed into the new presidency. So these relationships are much more played out, of course, on the media, as you would see, but the personal relationships and those ties between both countries are incredibly strong. And some of the common challenges, whether it be in defence and security, economic or otherwise, are there for all to see, and those can only be resolved by countries working together.
But would it also be an opportunity for you to seek out better trade relations with other great nations in China, with the EU, some of the many countries in Africa, for instance, and of course Asia. Are you then still emboldened to entreat with the Americans, considering that they might have inward-looking policy under Trump over the next 4 years? Wouldn't this be the best opportunity to go abroad?
Yeah, I don't think it's an either-or. I think you need to do both. We can't control internal economic or trade policy with America, and therefore we have to make the case for the United Kingdom and for our own views on trade and the economy. So we can't control what would happen internally in America or decisions the President make, but you do both. We want to make sure that we have a very strong economic and other relationship with the United States, but also with the rest of the world. The CPTPP being a key part of that, of course, the resetting of the relationship with the European Union and closer economic and cultural ties there with the renegotiation or in terms of the agreement we have with the European Union happening next year. So all of these things have to be done at the same time. And of course, the number one mission of this new government in the United Kingdom is economic growth. We can only have that economic growth by inward investment, by growing our own economy, and by making sure that we can work with others. And that doesn't mean that we choose one over the other. It means that we try and do everything that we possibly can, both with America and other countries around the world, which is why we're here in Malaysia, actually, because the opportunities between both nations are considerable, mutually beneficial for both nations, and actually we're very, very excited about continuing those and developing those relationships into the future.
Before we conclude our conversation, I would like to tap a little bit in terms of your views when it comes to federalism in Malaysia. We've seen how the states of Sabah and Sarawak are demanding more. You've had this experience when it comes to the Scottish independence. You voted against it. You wanted to be in the federation, I suppose. Is it a federation or is it a country of countries? I'm not too sure.
Well, yes, it's a country. It's not a federation. It's a country of 4 countries coming together under the United Kingdom.
Would you see countries, or in our case, federation, becoming stronger together? Or do you feel that states do have, at least in our case, states do have greater say and greater rights, or required to be given greater rights moving forward? Do you feel that the whole idea of a federation is still here to stay, or breakaway regions is better and then comes together again in a form of, say, trade blocks and stuff like that?
Well, I given my experience of the Scottish landscape and the constitutional elements of the United Kingdom, I would never dare to tread on someone else's constitutional arrangements in terms of commenting on that. But just generally, I'm a great believer in devolution and a great believer in subsidiarity. I do feel some of the political arguments around federalisation or otherwise become wrapped up in political arguments rather than about what is in the best interests of the public. In the UK environment, we have 4 nations that come together. Each of them have a different devolution settlement with different powers. Scotland is most advanced, but you have Wales and Northern Ireland at the same time. And of course, within England, some of those major regions around Merseyside or Greater Manchester or London have their own moralities that are increasingly having more powers, because the best place to make decisions is at the local level within the context of the United Kingdom. So devolution is never easy, because different decisions are made. There will always be elements from lesser devolution to more devolution, or less federalisation to more federalisation, but I'm a great believer in making sure that people should make decisions closer to where they live, and that's the best way to get best policy for the people that we seek to represent. In the United Kingdom at the moment, do we have devolution correct? Does it throw up challenges? Of course it does, but I think we've got a relatively stable settlement at the moment that means that we can have the best of both worlds in the Scottish context of a very strong Scottish Parliament with strong powers, but also under the umbrella of the United Kingdom.
What would be some of the risks that you are concerned about when it comes to domestic policies in the UK and perhaps the global scene as well?
Yes, well, the headwinds are strong. They're strong for the rest of the world as well. Economically, it's very difficult in the United Kingdom. We've had a significant budget deficit to have to deal with coming into as the new government.
So do we.
Yeah, in terms of the worst possible inheritance that we could have had since the Second World War is what we knew about, but also on top of that there was stuff that we didn't know about in terms of our public finances. So that's had to be dealt with, which is hugely politically difficult, but also difficult for the country. The budget was passed at the end of October, which sets the tone hopefully for the rest of this Parliament. So those are great challenges, but the international challenges are very clear, that have been hugely economically disadvantaged to the United Kingdom. So the war in Ukraine, issues in the Middle East, instability of other countries in terms of political instability. And one of the key things I think that the United Kingdom can offer the world at the moment is a very, very strong political settlement, a very, very strong and stable government, and a very, very strong and stable parliament. And that was the result of the election that we had back in July.
Final question, Minister. Do you feel that the relationship between the UK and Malaysia is on the right direction, or are there great areas of improvements that can be worked on even further?
Well, I'm really excited about the opportunities that we can work on together. and there's huge amounts of potential to be able to do so. The Economy Minister yesterday and I had a long discussion about some of those wonderful opportunities across a whole host of sectors. So I think there's a lot more to do. That puts a lot of pressure on the High Commission here, of course, to be able to help us deliver some of that. But working in partnership, the ties between both countries are very strong. Those bonds and those relationships are incredibly strong. The history is there for all to see in terms of the development of those bonds. But I'm really excited about the future and hopefully working together. And my visit here is part of that, to develop those relationships, to see what the opportunities are for both our countries and to try and develop those. And we'll look forward to the future, and hopefully there'll be some bilaterals between our leaders shortly that can be able to cement those relationships and take some of those opportunities forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. That was the Right Honourable Ian Murray, the Scottish Secretary of State. If you want to learn more about interviews like this or conversations like this, just head on to astroawani.com and find out more there, or you can search for my show, The Economy, with Ibrahim Sani. Until then, thanks very much for joining us. Catch you in the next one.